Separation Sunday, the second record, was going to come out, and we'd booked the Bowery Ballroom for the record release. And I was like, guys, we have to ask for a huge guest list. We have to get everyone from our work to come. It's going to look terrible. Like, we've sold out the Mercury Lounge, but the Bowery Ballroom's huge. And then like the Village Voice came out. We were on the cover, and like it sold out that day. And I was like, I went from freaking out that no one was going to come to like
turning people away at the guest.
Yeah, it's like saying like you can't be on the guest list anymore. I mean, that was a really exciting time.
I've been trying to get people to call me Freddy Knuckles. People keep calling me Right Said Fred. And it's hard to keep trying when half your friends are dying. It's hard to hold it steady when half your friends are dead already.
Hi, I'm Elia Einhorn. Welcome to the Talkhouse Music Podcast. Here at the Talkhouse, we pair notable musicians for thoughtful, unmoderated conversations and release new talks each week. Recent episodes have included Pavement's Stephen Malkmus with Holy Son's Emil Amos, and the Flaming Lips' Wayne Coyne with legendary hip-hop producer Prince Paul. Check out these and all of our past episodes, and subscribe to get new ones on Stitcher or iTunes. Today's guests are old friends and collaborators Craig Finn and Syd Butler in an episode recorded backstage at Late Night with Seth Meyers. Craig Finn fronted Twin Cities bar rockers Lifter Puller before moving to New York City and finding fame leading the Hold Steady. He's also released a pair of solo albums and is about to drop his third, We All Want the Same Things, next month. Syd Butler currently plays bass in Late Night with Seth Meyers' house band, but he's worn a couple of different hats over the years. On top of playing bass in the beloved post-punk group La Savie Fave, Butler founded French Kiss Records, who have released bands like Local Natives, The Drums, and Passion Pit. French Kiss also put out the Hold Steady's first two albums, 2004's Almost Killed Me, and the next year's Separation Sunday. To mark the deluxe reissue release of those LPs, Butler and Finn sat down for a Talkhouse talk. Their chat begins with a look behind the scenes of the Seth Meyers house band's process, and then moves into a funny and poignant recollection of the early Hold Steady years. It also takes in Butler's high school straight-edge band, the pluses and minuses of smartphones for musicians, and the time Finn and Butler's bands were playing together, and the one and only Joe Strummer showed up to catch the gig, and enthusiastically shout at the performers. Check it out.
You know, the last guy, I guess he didn't even have to die, but the first four looked so nice. And I wanted 5.
Should we identify ourselves? I'm Craig Finn.
I'm Syd Butler.
And I've known Syd since I think 1999. But I guess to set the scene, we're here in the rehearsal room of the HG band at the Seth Meyers show, where Syd is a band member, and I am fortunate enough to be guesting this week, which has been a lot of fun. But I guess maybe a cool way to start this would be to talk about how this part works. We're sitting in the rehearsal room, which is where the day begins. And can you explain what happens during a day here?
Happily. So the show's been on for almost 3 years now, 3 years in February. At this day, December 21st, we've done 466 shows. And Fred Armisen put the band together very quickly. It happened about over a 2-week period of time. And the rumor is, or the history is, it's been foggy now, but long story short, he was asked to put an indie band together for the show. So he asked me and Seth Jabor and Eli Janney to help him. And we hired a drummer named Kim. And that was the band. And over the course of 3 years, it's changed a bunch. But long story short, when we first started playing, we would write songs. It would take about 8 hours to write the 5 or 9 songs for the day. And now we've gotten it down to shorthand. So we come in about 12:30 and crank out. Today we did 1, 2, 3, 4. We did 7 pieces of music in about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So now we do it much faster, and it's all shorthand.
Right. And now the music you're creating is every day. Now I'm guesting this day, so we're going to do one of my songs what would happen in that slot otherwise? Would it just be an original composition?
Yeah, so we'd have to write an original composition for that day. The show doesn't like us to repeat songs.
Right.
So we have to, I think we have 3,000 pieces of music at this point.
And like for my week, it was, one cover / composition. In my case, we did a Hold Steady song or a Lifter Puller song on Monday, a Hold Steady song yesterday, and then we're doing one of my solo things today. But the rest is original, which is, I can say it's very interesting to watch both the creative process and then when you get out on stage, how it makes sense, like it's like most of these pieces have two parts, right? And they toggle back. And I guess Eli is saying change or Fred is saying change.
When Fred is not here, Eli is the director, and he's the one that's in charge of telling us in our ears to change, to keep things going. And sometimes it's a little counterintuitive because as an audience member, you might think that we should change, or when we have these new drummers, they want to change because we've done a part A for a normal amount of time, and then we extend it, or we play part B for a long period of time or a short period of time. And that always throws people when they come and join us. But we've learned to trust each other. I think that's how this has become such a successful, quote, band.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly it's able to communicate quickly, and ideas seem like. When you guys are in here, watching you put it in, an idea can come from literally anything. Including a word, or a joke, or just two notes.
Yeah, I think that's what, going back to even having you here for the week. There's just an intrinsic amount of trust and history and vernacular that we all have. So. Yesterday I was like, hey, Fred, play a Stereolab beat.
Yeah.
And then instantly, as if someone hit a magic button, everyone starts playing their version of a Stereolab song that happens to be in the same key, in the same tempo. And then, hey, let's play a garage song. Boom, there's the garage song.
Yeah. There's a like the Stereolab song is funny because I think like everyone kind of perked up because I think probably everyone in the room is a Stereolab fan, and you sort of have an idea of what that song sounds like before anyone plays one note, and what the tones are and how quickly it moves or not quickly, and it was cool. That was really a really good one.
There was also the one yesterday we did where I basically ripped off a Fugazi Joe Lally bass line, but we were so conscious that it sounded so much like a Fugazi bass line that then Seth, the guitar player, started writing country riffs over it, and then it sort of became this new, weird, hybrid, kind of this weird song that we used. But it happens a lot. Or going back to the point about a joke, we all have these quick memories of things. Right? Having Fred here is great, or a story like, hey, it's so great to have someone here from, playing with David Bowie to playing with Pearl Jam to playing with the Chili Peppers, and everyone always tells a tour story. It's nice to have all these musicians that have been on tour and have a history and a legacy. And we always get so excited about what their life was like in the early days versus, what was it like being in the Chili Peppers early and during the Chili Peppers now? What was it like, talking to Abe Laboriel Jr.? He's been playing with Paul McCartney longer than the Beatles were around.
Wow.
So you get to hear these stories, or David Lovering from the Pixies does magic tricks before each episode. So there was always this nice, you get to know these people and their connection to their bands that you've grown up worshiping and loving and connecting to.
Sure. Well, thinking about that, so just going around the room, Fred Armisen is obviously known for his television career, but I met him in 1993 as a member of the band Trenchmouth. I met you in 99, and Seth as members of the band Les Savi Fav. Eli was in Girls Against Boys, who are a band I was mad about through the 90s. And Mary was in Helium and X-Hex and Wild Flag. And I'm in Lifter Puller. But I guess backing up, when you look at like what's happened, how you got here from wherever it was started, does it feel like linear? Or I guess you started in D.C., and before Les Savi Fav, you were in bands in high school probably?
Yeah, I was in bands in high school. I was in a straight edge band, of course.
What was that called?
Strength in numbers.
You got to have strength in there.
I
If
know.
there's a chain of strength in numbers.
I know, and I was the vocalist, and I can't sing a note, so that was a short-lived career.
Were you actually straight edge?
Yeah, I was straight edge.
Okay. Because that's not always a requirement to be in a straight edge
No,
band.
yeah, no, I became straight edge to be in the band. But it was interesting, and yeah, that lasted about a month and a half.
And then was there another, like, Desiderata?
Yeah, I was in a band with Amanda Mackay called Desiderata.
Yeah.
And that was sort of my band that life was serious, and we took it seriously, and we went on tour, and we put out a 7-inch, and we made T-shirts and flyers and played at benefit shows. And
Was it a Fugazi-esque band?
I think every band at the time of that era was either a rip-off Rites of Spring band or a rip-off Fugazi band.
It was a DC sounding style band.
Every guitarist wanted a Marshall half stack.
Yeah.
Every bass player just recycled that SVT. You know, I think I bought Andy Rappaport's bass, his SVT from King Face. So there was sort of this stuff that kept being passed on.
Yeah.
And it was very supportive. Obviously, an amazing scene, amazing time. But yeah, that's where I started. And to answer your question about was this linear, absolutely not. You know,
Well-
if you would ask me if I was going to be playing bass in a late night TV show with a bunch of my best friends that I've known my whole life, I would think that, 20 years ago, you'd be on crack.
But that's sort of what I mean about linear. I mean, it's like you didn't, at any point, there's been so many things in between. I mean, there's Les Avifa's been a constant, but you started a record label, French Kiss, and which has had some, bands, myself and, Hold Steady was on it, Passion Pit, Local Natives. I mean, there's some really big records came out on that. And then last night you said you still have a title, The Orchard?
Yeah, so I'm still with The Orchard. The thing with The Orchard, they've been sort of part of my family, my music family for a long time, and super supportive of French Kiss for back when you worked at the Digital Club Network, and brought us into The Orchard. It's such a funny small circle. Very quickly, when digital music started to become a thing, Craig worked at
The Orchard,
a company called
Digital Club Network, and then The Orchard.
The Orchard. So he was A&R for the Digital Club Network and brought French Kiss in to that system. And then a couple of years ago, so every 3 years, my contract with The Orchard would come up. And then every 3 years, I'd have to negotiate a new contract. So finally, about a year and a half ago, I sold the assets to The Orchard. And then one of the benefits was that they would be helping me run the day-to-day while I was on Seth Meyers.
Sure. And then I guess my point is, it seems like none of it was like at any point you didn't say like, what I got to do now is get on a television show. It just sort of, these things kept rolling, right?
Yeah, my grandfather used to say the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah.
And then when I was in college, my professor kept saying, just keep showing up. It's going to be cold. You might get rained on, but just keep showing up. And I felt like those two things should be tattooed on my back or somehow. But I just kept showing up.
Yeah.
And we had this conversation a bit last night that the people who didn't show up have sort of fell by the wayside, and here we are sort of surviving at the top of this mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always feel like with the Hold Steady, and especially looking back to Lifter Puller, my first band, we played a lot of shows that were, had an attendance of like 8 people. And I can't tell you how many times I'm on tour with the Hold Steady and some guy will be like, yeah, I saw Lifter Puller in, St. Louis and in 98. And you'll be like, there was 4 people there. He's like, yeah, I was one of them.
Yeah.
I was like, you should have said hi.
Right, yeah.
It would have been nice if you would have said hello. But sometimes when you think you're not making a difference, you're actually planting a seed to something, and it's hard to tell sometimes, and it's hard to remind yourself, but it's there, and it makes you feel good that I'm glad. I wasn't not sure that playing that show in St. Louis was a good idea,
Right.
But now you're like, I'm glad we did that.
Yeah, I always tell the young bands that I work with on French Kiss that the shows that you remember most are the shows with 8 people in St. Louis. It's the shows where you play in front of 2,000 people that you don't remember.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times, we stayed at someone's house or had to hustle to, eat or whatever the situation was. The adrenaline rush was there in the beginning. And when you get paid, the bands sort of start to fall apart because they're missing that urgency of their music. And I just remember, going back to Minneapolis when Girls Against Boys keep circling back, Girls Against Boys brought Les 5 out on tour with them. We played at First Avenue, and you were one of the 9 people there with the show. And we hung out and put out a record, and then we put out a record, and here we are, 20 years later. It's such a weird, serendipitous, karmic, universal connection.
The first time, speaking of a karmic connection, the first time we ever played a show together, Les 5 came to Minneapolis, and it was Lifter Puller was right about to put out Fiestas and Fiascos. We played the show, or no, you guys played first, and then right as we went on, word came in the back that Joe Strummer was in the room.
Yeah,
and I thought,
awesome.
Joe Strummer is going to have a drink and leave. But next thing I know, they're like, and someone wants to meet you guys. And Joe Strummer hung out that night. He'd taken drink, but he hung out for quite a while after the show. And it was really a spectacular. He's like my all-time hero. I think we all were just like, I can't believe this is happening. And not only that he's hanging out for a long time. And I remember in the vein, we played Chicago the next day. And I remember driving down we played Shubas the next day, and driving down to Chicago, and we're into Wisconsin. And Dan said, the drummer of Lifter Puller said, I'm really excited about this show tonight. I love playing in Chicago, but it's probably not going to be as good as last night. And it's those things that you can't plan for that I think sometimes are the most crazy.
No, that was. I think I still have pictures of that on my computer. But yeah, my face was in every picture was just joy and shock.
Yeah.
And I remember 2 things he said that night. One was he sort of yelled out into the crowd, "It's Lifter Puller's world, and we're just a part of it."
Yeah.
And the other thing he said that in the early days of the Clash, they would have an extra mic on stage for people that just wanted to get up on stage and vent and yell. Because people were so stressed and so angry that they would just, while they were playing, they'd just go up on stage, then jump off. I don't know if that's true or not, but I just love the idea of that, like while the Clash are playing, Paul Simonon, all these people doing their cool vibe, this awesome music, and then some fucking drunk knucklehead being like, "Fuck the Queen," and jumping off stage.
I think maybe like that's something to bring back. I'm just thinking of like, and we have this election that happened, and like, do you think we're due for like a Clash or a Fugazi or something? Is that, and rock doesn't seem like it holds the same cachet anymore. But the idea of like, I never saw the Clash, but I saw like you probably saw Fugazi a lot. And there was something about that band that it got people in a room feeling a certain way. And I'm not sure I know another band that did that and had sort of politics involved in it. Do you think we could see that again?
I think we will. The one sort of caveat about this election is that art will be good again. I think there was been a drought. I feel like when Reagan was president, when Bush was president, there was sort of this voice that people had. They were angry. They were intelligent about it and created great art. And for the past 8 years, we've had, a president who's taken us out of a terrible recession. He's changed the economy. He's done a lot of great things, whether you like it or not. And now we're back to an angry, divided state. And I think people on both sides will make really cool things, whether they like it or not.
That's certainly one theory. I'm not sure. I kind of believe art's been good, and I will remain to see what it changes. But I still think there's a power in getting people in a room that, because it's so easy to stay home. I say this at my shows all the time, that it's so easy to stay home that there might be like a renewed power of, if Fugazi was pay no more than $5 to get in the show, what if this next band was turn off your phone?
Right.
We're all going into a room together. That would be a revolutionary act and would, maybe at least create some conversation or create thought that's interesting. And I wonder if there's, something like the Clash or Fugazi, there's something that's just really grassroots about it. I wonder if there's ever something like that down the pike, or it looks different. Maybe it looks different.
Well, I think there are bands out there. Even Against Me, they have a new record out and they're on tour, and Laura Grace has sort of gone through this transition, and she's very political. She wrote this great book.
Yeah.
She has a lot to say. So I feel like there's a movement to bring an understanding of different lifestyles, especially now when people are so against certain lifestyles. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, going back to your show the other day, a couple weeks ago, the Hold Steady show, one of the things that I remarked on was that there were no phones. They were totally present in your show. And the last time I saw that was in London when I saw Savages. Like, everyone was present, wanted to pay attention, wanted to be connected to the music.
Yeah, you said that last night, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I didn't have phones in my face that whole, like, all weekend. Like, it was really nice. People seemed to be like, I'm here. And I do think, like, we're also entering this age of, I mean, I know, like, when I first got an iPhone, it was like, oh, I'm watching this cool band, I should film a little. And then you're like, well, you get home and I'm like, well, who's it going to show it to? Like, Angie doesn't want to see it, So, like, I can either watch it again or I could just delete it off my phone. But I feel like everyone probably went through that and was like, there's only so much you need an audit, like you could put it on YouTube, I guess, but who really wants to see it?
Yeah, I just started voice memoing the shows because I wanted to hear the song or remember the moment, but I wanted to stay present.
Oh,
so I just
cool.
like voice memo. Oh, this is my favorite song. Voice memo it, get a reference to the recording. I mean, clearly I'm not going to sell it or send it to anyone, but I wanted to go back and be like, oh, this is their version of my favorite song.
Yeah.
But it's easier for me to swallow than, it never looks good because on the screen, it just doesn't, it never comes out.
It's funny that
you want it to.
The voice memo app on your phone is like, it's like the most useful thing on my phone. Like, I wrote my whole album on voice memos. I just, like, people are like, oh, do you use GarageBand? It's like, why would I need all that stuff? Yeah. Like, I can just hit record, play the song, hit stop, and then I have it. And then, I can show it to whoever needs to see it.
Right.
It's, and all these options, but somehow you end up stripping them all away.
Oh, she said I won't be much for conversation if we go into the rest of this. And I ain't never been much for the conservation. I kind of dig these awkward silences.
We can bring this up how we met. So Craig Finn worked at this company called DCN, and we were in talks, and he's like, yeah, I think I'm going to start a bar band and keep it really simple. We're not going to go on tour. We just want to put a record out. And we went to a tiny little Mexican hole in the wall called Paquitos.
I don't know. You know what? Actually, I have to interrupt. I think we may have negotiated there, but where we signed the contract with French Kiss was at Mariella's Pizza on 3rd Avenue and 16th or 15th.
But Paquitos and Mariella's were like a block away from each other. So the whole sort of early Hold Steady days were, and also DCN was a couple blocks away.
Yeah. DCN was in the De La Guardia building. So I worked there. Chris Newmeyer, our friend there, was there.
But yeah, we did this deal over a handshake and good times, and then the record came out, and it kind of percolated, and people were excited about it, but it wasn't until the end of the year where it blew up.
Yeah, I mean, and then the record, and the funny thing about, not that like we were sought after, but I remember thinking like, when the Hold Steady started, because we had a classic rock sound. It was kind of like maybe a little down the middle compared to a lot of like, but I remember like thinking, this is actually great marketing because French Kiss is, hot, cool label. We're going to come out on that and people will look at it differently. Like if it just came out on, a major label or something, people would be like, oh, it's this bar rock band. But if it's bar rock that's coming out and playing in front of Les Savifaves, people are like, wait a minute, this is something else, And I think that there was something inherently good in the marketing of just the juxtaposition of those things.
No, I agree. I think French Kiss also sort of tongue-in-cheek, and people always ask me, what's your secret? I'm like, I just like bands that are good.
Yeah.
And they're bands that do well that are good, and they're bands that I like that don't do well that do, but I still think they're awesome.
Yeah.
But it's like how quickly your trajectory was to how, some bands go on tour for a long time and are real grunt guys, but you guys, it was so fast that, French Kiss was one person, an intern, and it just exploded. And I just remember when you guys were on the cover of the Village Voice, I think it was the first band
in like 10 years
10 years or
yeah.
something nuts. And I just remember there wasn't enough time in the day for me to handle. I was so excited for you guys, but I couldn't even handle the trajectory of your success.
Well, at one point I remember, and the other part of early Hold Steady lore was home base was Hi-Fi, with the old Brownies. And we'd go there, Galen worked there, but so obviously it was, there was benefits to that, but we'd go out there all the time. And I remember like all of us, I think Amy was there and Chris White was there, and there's like a back, it's almost like a booth, but kind of a room. And we had a meeting back there because Separation Sunday, the second record was going to come out, and we'd booked the Bowery Ballroom for the record release. And I was like, guys, we have to ask for a huge guest list. We have to get everyone from our work to come. It's going to look terrible. Like, we've sold out the Mercury Lounge, but the Bowery Ballroom's huge. And then like the Village Voice came out. We were on the cover and like it sold out that day. And I was like, I went from freaking out that no one was going to come to like
turning people away at the guest.
Yeah, it's like saying like you can't be on the guest list anymore. I mean, that was a really exciting time. We did some pretty cool. Also did the Australia tour with Les Avis Fav, which was spectacular. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up now that I think about it. We're going to do Neumeyer's Roof today on the show. That's a song about being on Chris Neumeyer's roof on 9/11. Were you with us?
I was not. I was on my own roof.
Okay. We went to Chris Neumeyer's roof, who was my boss at the time, and we're watching the towers go down. And we didn't know what to do. So we didn't know how we should feel, so we got a bunch of beer.
Yeah.
And I probably drank 8 beers that day, and it seems wildly inappropriate, but at the same time, I didn't know what else to do with myself.
I remember someone put it that someone tried to kill you that day.
What?
The attack on 9/11 on the towers in New York, being so close to it that someone tried to kill you that day.
Right.
So you survived, others didn't, but I think that really messes with your system.
Yeah. There's, literally the physicalness of. I would go running. I lived in Borum Hill at the time, and I would run in the morning down to the promenade and back, and just the physical presence of the towers being missing was a very strange thing. Now, I'd only been in New York a year at that point, but
right.
But still, there was something there. But I don't know. It's funny. I've been doing some of this talking about the Hold Steady for these podcasts we've been doing for the reissues that just came out on French Kiss. But it's like, it's 15 years on, and some of it runs together, and trying to figure out, who all was there, who all was not. But it's been a pretty crazy run. From that night hanging out with Joe Strummer, November 1999 to December 2016, a lot of things. It's pretty spectacular to be in this room, and not to mention with Seth and Fred and everyone else. So
it's truly bizarre.
Truly bizarre.
It's truly bizarre.
Well, the gangsters throw preludes and sold this one weed called White Tiger. Worth Park had a body, the holiday guy couldn't make change. The parking lot scene still existed, but not without problems. I came back to St. Paul, and things had progressed and got strange.
Hi, I'm Elia Einhorn, and you've been listening to Craig Finn and Syd Butler on the Talkhouse Music Podcast. Check out our past episodes featuring Craig, his talk with Seth Meyers on the Talkhouse Film Podcast, and his leading the fan Q&A during a live chat between the Replacements' Tommy Stinson and Wayne Kramer of the MC5. Subscribe on Stitcher or iTunes for upcoming episodes like Talkhouse Music's conversation between Joy Division and New Order's Peter Hook and the Smiths' Andy Rourke, and Talkhouse Film's fantastic chat between Chappelle's Show's Neil Brennan and Frontline's Michael Kirk. Today's episode was recorded and mixed by Mark Yoshizumi. Till next time.
These red bicycles up to the market. Fish straight to water, but licenses they get revoked.